One thing many gamers complain about these days is AAA companies putting a huge emphasis on multiplayer games instead of single-player experiences. While there are some great multiplayer titles in the indie sphere, single-player games are also very much alive and well in this space. Many of the shining examples of solo experiences may already be popular, but there are still some great ones that get overlooked, in part due to the sheer number of indies that release each day. Here are 10 single-player indie games in various genres that deserve more attention, and perhaps you've never played at all. Before we get into the list real quick, why don't you send a little attention our way over at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames to support indie gaming visibility. You'll gain Discord access, early ad-free shows, shoutouts at the end of every video we produce, and even free games depending on the tier. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. Okay, we'll start things off with a satirical RPG from Zeboyd Digital Entertainment that features a cast of undead heroes. In Breath of Death 7: The Beginning, players control skeletal warrior Dem as he sets out to discover the origins of civilization in his world. I should probably put your mind at ease and explain that the number in this title is a joke, and there are not actually that many entries in the series. This should also give you a pretty good idea of the kind of humor you can expect. Dem's adventure begins when he is recognized as a local hero after defeating a band of trolls, which catches the attention of a ghostly scholar named Sarah. Sarah is looking to discover more about the history of undead civilizations and needs a warrior to accompany her on a dangerous adventure through the ruins of this world. The interactions between Dem and Sarah are one of the most amusing aspects of this entire game. Dem is a silent protagonist, but Sarah has the ability to read minds, so she's still able to engage in conversation with Dem, which brings a fresh dynamic to the dialogue. The stoic Dem and the high energy and enthusiastic Sarah make for an odd pairing, but they soon grow on each other and become love interests. They are later joined by Lita, a vampire with a passion for technology, and Eric, a zombie prince who lacks a desire for the throne and is more interested in skirt chasing and adventure. The team of misfits provides some amusing interactions both among themselves and with others, and there's a chat feature in the menu where your party members will discuss recent events or have random conversations. The battle system is really fun here, with an emphasis on the combo counter that adds up with each consecutive hit that your party lands against enemies. This number will then amplify your special abilities, which deal out damage based on the number in the combo counter, but will also reset it. So strategically, getting the combo counter up will allow you to do massive damage against bosses and enemies with high HP, but the stats of enemies will also grow higher with each round of combat, so the challenge is in balancing the build-up while defeating enemies quickly. Breath of Death 7: The Beginning is a short and sweet experience. I recommend it to fans of retro JRPGs, those of you that love silly humor, and Bone Daddy protagonists. It's available digitally on PC for just $2.99 here in North America. Next, we have Neverending Nightmares, a horror game developed and published by Infinitap Games, in which a man keeps awakening from nightmares only to find himself in a whole new one. Players control Thomas as he navigates from one nightmare to another and attempts to find a way to free himself from this horrific loop. The premise is presented in a wonderful hand-drawn style that looks like a book illustration come to life. While it is mostly black and white, a few objects have color to indicate that they are interactive, and there is a splash of red when blood is present. Thomas mainly walks around these dream environments and can pick up items to use in certain nightmares. You can find things like a lit candle that will allow you to access dark areas, or an axe that can be used to tear down boards that block access to a door. In Thomas's first nightmare, he sees himself stabbing a young girl who he identifies as his sister, and then he awakens to find that same girl as an adult, waking him up and inviting him to breakfast. Relieved that he did not actually kill her, he is later terrified when he discovers his sister's tombstone in a cemetery, and then sees her alive again as an adult when he returns home. He awakens again and again into new nightmares where the woman has different relationships to him, sometimes identifying herself as a therapist or as his wife. Soon he encounters monstrous creatures in the nightmares, and he begins to search for clues as to what his relationship with this woman actually is, whether this was a girl who actually died, and what the monsters he encounters might be symbolic of, all in the hopes that discovering the truth will free him from these nightmares. With its impressive visual presentation, great atmospheric dark ambient soundtrack, surreal presentation, and successful creation of tension, Neverending Nightmares is a horror game definitely worthy of your time. It's available digitally on PC, Switch, and PS4 for $14.99. Number 8, Kill the Crows is an intense twin-stick shooter with a weird western theme and one-hit deaths for both the player and the enemies. Developed and published by 5min Lab, players control a gunslinger hell-bent on revenge against a cult of crow-headed beings who attack their village. The story is told in a minimalistic way through dialogue before each boss fight. These story segments gradually reveal the history of this grudge and what happened to cause it. While the story isn't expanded upon in depth, it doesn't have to be in a game like this where the focus is almost entirely upon the action. Here you'll get the intense action of a retro-style arcade twin-stick shooter mixed with modern elements, which diversifies the appeal and makes the game seem slightly more forgiving when it comes to things like passive upgrades. If you're into games like Smash TV and Vampire Survivors, then you'll probably find plenty to enjoy in Kill the Crows. It's a great game to pick up and play if you have 20 to 30 minutes to kill. You can get this one digitally for the PC for $4.99. Verne, The Shape of Fantasy is next, an adventure game set in a steampunk alternate reality. Developed by Gametopia and published by Assemble Entertainment and Whisper Games, players control author Jules Verne as he finds himself in an alternate world, caught in a struggle between an authoritarian government and a rebel force seeking to overthrow it. Jules must determine who he can trust, discover the motives of those around him, and do what he can to survive, because threats can come from more than one side. The gameplay is very much in the spirit of a point-and-click adventure, but switches to a more action-based interface when you control Jules to interact with objects by walking up to them, and it even incorporates some stealth elements. The mix of exploration, interrogation, stealth, and puzzle solving makes for an interesting, varied, and enjoyable gameplay experience. If you'd like to learn more about the game, I had the pleasure of reviewing Verne, The Shape of Fantasy for I Dream of Indie Games last year, so I recommend checking it out for more of a detailed overview. You can get this game digitally on the PC for $14.99. Number 6, Mothmen 1966, a work of interactive fiction that mixes elements of multiple genres, including visual novels, adventure games, and strategy games. Developed by LCB Game Studio and published by Chorus Worldwide Games, the game has the player alternate between controlling 3 main characters whose stories connect as they try to find a way to survive the night. The game is filled with frightening encounters involving strange scientific phenomena and encounters with both the supernatural and the extraterrestrial as well. The interface is mainly of a choose-your-own-adventure style in the story sections and will sometimes switch to a sub-game for an event. The most frequent kind of sub-game is a turn-based strategy minigame that appears in events that involve fighting or evading enemies. The choices you make will determine the events you experience and later the ending you receive. How well the playable characters and NPCs in the story get along will also partially depend upon your decisions. If the game piques your interest at all, then I recommend checking out another LCB game called Varney Lake that has some story connections and shared characters with this game. Mothmen 1966 is available digitally for the PC for $8.99. This next title blends mission-based 2D action gameplay with RPG elements. Developed by Winowrite and Team Earth Wars, published by Winowrite, Earth's Dawn features a soldier protagonist fighting monstrous life forms known as EBE, who are attacking and bringing the risk of human extinction with their onslaught. Humanity's hope is placed in the soldiers clad in armor, incorporating tissues of the EBE that gives them strength to fight back against the might of these invading hordes. The action takes place on individual sets of missions in different regions. There's a lot of different classes for your character and different upgrade paths to choose as well. Custom weapons can also be created and enhanced using various materials you find on the different missions to add elemental attributes or status effects to attacks, so there's a lot you can do with this game. You'll also eventually get more data involving events and characters related to the story that will be added to an index you can access between your missions. If you want some hack and slash gameplay with customizable character building and a post-apocalyptic sci-fi theme, then Earth's Dawn is worthy of your attention. You can find it digitally on the PC for $14.99. Developed by Bonus Level Entertainment and published by Just for Games, Saga of Sins is an interesting take on an action-adventure platformer where players control a cleric who takes upon the archetypal images of fearsome creatures from folklore to enter the minds of people and purge the sins that are corrupting and misleading them. The faithful medieval cleric has been given the ability by his mentor to enter the minds of the people of Sinwell, who have been afflicted by the 7 deadly sins. The mind of each sinner will consist of a level, and which sins the person is experiencing building will determine the kind of enemies that appear. You'll be able to find coins in each level that can be spent at a skill tree to add ability upgrades to each of the forms that your character is able to take on his sin-busting missions. The missions have great arcade-like action gameplay, and the art style in each mission is in the form of stained glass that's just as beautiful to look at as it is fun to play. You'll explore Sinwell and speak to its various residents to learn about current events and gain intel on the actions of people who may be afflicted by sin. It makes for an interesting gameplay experience that alternates between arcade action, character building, and story-based investigation. I recommend giving it a try if this sounds like your kind of game. Saga of Sins is available digitally on PC for $14.99. It's also on Switch, PS4, PS5, and Xbox Series for $19.99. There is a European physical release for Switch and PS5 that you can get for $44.99 from Play Asia, and an upcoming North American physical release for the same platforms coming out February 9th of this year, 2024, that you can pre-order for $39.99 from Play Asia and Video Games Plus. At number 3, this next one is a unique take on psychological horror done in a surreal 2D pixel art style. Developed by Atelier QDB and published by Shiro Unlimited and East to West Games, Decarnation follows the story of Gloria, a cabaret dancer who's struggling to determine which direction her life should take her as it falls apart following a devastating breakup with an ex who wasn't interested in the same kind of serious commitment that she was, and as the club she performs at struggles financially, things just get worse and worse. A mysterious fan offers her a new job opportunity promising to fund a world tour for her, and while she initially dismisses this as suspicious, Gloria eventually decides to accept as things get worse and she fears that she will soon have nothing left. After meeting with a man claiming to work for this mysterious benefactor, she wakes up in a locked room realizing that she's been drugged and abducted. The man she met earlier shows up again to bring her food and claims that he does not approve of how she's being treated. He has no choice but to follow his master's orders, and he attempts to gain her trust to convince her that he is concerned for her well-being. Gloria's mental health begins to deteriorate under these circumstances, and she starts to see hallucinations of monstrous beings and experience alternate realities related to her fears and desires. As she struggles to determine what is real and what's in her mind, she must also find out if the man who's been taking care of her is really what he claims to be, and what kind of situation she's truly in. The nightmarish surrealism is done in a compelling style with captivating pixel art, and the developers claim Silent Hill, Alice in Wonderland, and the films of David Lynch and Satoshi Kon as influences. That should give you a pretty good idea of what to expect here. I highly recommend this title if it sounds like your cup of tea. Decarnation is available digitally on PC and Switch for $14.99. Number 2, developed by Hibernian Workshop and published by the Arcade Crew and Maple Whispering, Dark Devotion is a Souls-like Roguevania where players control a Templar Knight as she explores dungeons traveling through 4 general areas with multiple pathways that can be taken. The action is mostly melee-based, with your Templar being able to attack, dodge, block, and parry, with attacks and dodges consuming points from a pool of stamina. Faith is a resource accumulated from enemy drops and functions as both a currency to purchase upgrades as well as a pool of magic points required by certain abilities. Perks can be purchased by Faith, and each perk will have 5 available levels. Stat upgrades can be obtained both through getting better equipment and accessories and finding tablets in areas that provide permanent stat upgrades to your Templar. There is also a system of blessings and diseases one can obtain that provides buffs or debuffs. Equipment and accessories are lost upon death, and you'll respawn at a hub after dying. At hubs, you can purchase upgrades, get gear from a blacksmith, and accept side quests from NPCs. There are both mandatory and optional bosses in the game, and which optional boss you encounter during a run will depend upon the path that you choose to progress through an area. Overall, Dark Devotion offers both a satisfying Souls-like and Roguevania experience, but I would recommend this mostly to those who enjoy both of those genres because the Souls-like elements might feel overwhelmingly frustrating to those who aren't fans of the genre. You can get it digitally on PC, Switch, and PS4 for $19.99. There was a limited physical release for both Switch and PS4 that was put out by Limited Run, and you'll have to go to the collector's market to find a copy. The Switch version usually goes in the $40 to $60 range for the standard edition and $100 plus for collectors. The PS4 version goes for around $100 for the standard version and $150 for the collectors. Alright everybody, thank you so much for making it through another list. We hope you've enjoyed all these selections so far. Now we'll end things with a visual novel combining psychological horror and thriller elements with a lot more complexity than there might seem to be on the surface. Developed and published by River Crow Studio, Corpse Factory follows the story of Noriko, an office worker who lives a double life as a corpse girl. She runs runs a website where people can submit information on people they'd like to see die. According to an urban legend, if people submit the information about a person, then the person will receive a message informing them of their impending death and will soon die after. This premise may sound similar to those that are into the anime series Hellgirl, but how things play out here are very different. Instead of having supernatural powers to end someone's life, Noriko instead drives people to suicide or to putting themselves into perilous situations by making them believe they are cursed. As one can imagine, a person who would do something like this is not in a healthy mental state, and Noriko's fascination with death is also partially from her wondering if she would truly prefer dying over living. Her declining mental state becomes even more complicated in her social relationships as her longtime best friend heads into a downward spiral in her own life and in how she makes new friends in unexpected places, both through her workplace and through a fan who discovers her identity as Corpse Girl. The character development involving both the positive and negative relationships in Noriko's life are really interesting to watch as she struggles to maintain her sanity and questions what she should be doing with her life and whether she's justified in driving people to their deaths even if they have been shown to be horrible people themselves. With heavy subject matter involving suicide, self-harm, mental illness, and a psychosexual fascination with death, this is a game for mature audiences only, and it is not for the faint of heart or those easily triggered by such content. So take that into consideration as to whether this is something for you. For those who can handle the content and would be interested in a story with such themes and topics, I highly recommend Corpse Factory because it provides a fascinating exploration of those topics and how people relate to them. You can get this digitally for both PC and Nintendo Switch for $19.99. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your time as always, and we hope you found your next indie game in this list or one of our many other lists here at the channel, or our reviews as well. Whatever you do to support I Dream of Indie Games, we appreciate you greatly. Patreon.com/idreamofindiegames if you would like to help fund our mission. I will see you in the next indie video for more great content.